this chap who I'd never heard of, didn't even bother researching on the internet, called Ian Crane. Never heard of him. And the 8th of September last year was the start of everything, so that's my way here tonight. And I've got a few notices to give out, because we've got a few changes going on, but in the meantime, I'd like to give a very great welcome to Mr. Ian Crane.
Sorry, if I look a bit flustered and sweaty, my week started out being quite a casual week. I only had a presentation in Sheffield on Monday, one tonight here in Birkenhead, and then one in Friday. But being in Sheffield, it just so happens that this week is the tribunal with Mr. Tony Farrell, who is the senior analyst, or was a senior analyst with the West Yorkshire Police. He's been with the Yorkshire Police for 17 years. But then last year, in July of last year, he had an epiphany. He suddenly saw certain global events, specifically 9/11 and 7/7, in a completely different light. And as a senior analyst, he put in a report to his bosses in the West Yorkshire Police, basically saying we shouldn't be wasting resources on Islamic terrorism, we should actually be focused on what's going on in Westminster, which unfortunately didn't go down very well. So he got fired. So anyway, it just so happens that we have the appeal hearing, and in my past life in the corporate world, I spent some time in what the term grates on me every time I say it, but human resources. I hate that phrase with a vengeance. But despite that, I had some experience of tribunals. So when I was with Tony on Tuesday night, and we were going through his case, and we were looking at how it was going to unfold, or how we thought it might unfold. We got to 8:30 on the morning of Wednesday, and I was going along as an observer. And the next thing I know, I'm acting as his legal counsel. So we're 2 days into the hearing, and the gods are smiling on me because yesterday we finished at sort of 4:30. Which gave me time to do the preparations for today. Today we finished at 4:30, which gave me time to drive over here. So here I am, and then I'm back to Sheffield tonight, and when I get back there I've got to write the summation, because tomorrow is the final day of the hearing, and we've got the summation. I'm not exactly holding my breath. I think he's going to get it done, you can say that. But it's going to be a tough call. Either way, the case of Tony Farrell is certainly going to go down in legal history, because ostensibly he's been fired for a thought crime.
What was the clause, please?
Well, basically, he never had any question up until July last year. He never had any reason to question the orthodox worldview, i.e. the view as presented by the mainstream media in every way, shape or form. And then he was asked to do a terror assessment, a strategic terror assessment, and in the course of doing that, he stumbled across, for the first time in his career, would you believe, a whole bunch of information about 9/11 and 7/7, which as he dug deeper and deeper. And bear in mind, the guy is a professional analyst. I mean, he has his first degree is in statistical analysis, and his postgraduate degree is in criminal. No, it's criminal analysis or whatever. But anyway, I mean, basically that's 17 years with the police, and the police found it extremely difficult to understand why one of their most trusted analysts all of a sudden started to question the orthodox version of events. So they actually tried to insinuate that he'd lost the plot, he had a mental breakdown. And rather than, nobody's even looked at it. I mean, this is the strongest part of the case that I've got to put forward tomorrow, is that nobody actually looked at what he was putting forward. Nobody actually said, what if he's right? What if he's right? The automatic view within the South Yorkshire Police was the guy's a nutter. And they sent him to occupational health to have an assessment, and of course they were all assuming that he was going to come back as a sort of diagnosed head case. But unfortunately for the South Yorkshire Police, the occupational health unit gave him a clean bill of health. But by that time, the steam train was coming down the tracks, and he was going to be fired. So what's really going to come down to now is whether or not the tribunal are able to somehow jump through intellectual legal hoops to justify his termination or whether or not justice is done. But either way, the tribunal are onto a very difficult situation. And of course, what he's experienced, what Tony has experienced in terms of suddenly having his worldview changed is something that's happening more and more and more. You know, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, most of you, if not all of you here tonight, if you actually think back, you know, however many number of years, then your worldview today is very, very different from what it was a few years ago. You know, there's no single trigger. Obviously 9/11 was a very, very significant one for a lot of people. The London bombings were for some people, but for other people have come at it from completely different angles. But nonetheless, the worldview today is very different from what it was. And so, as this occurs, then of course we start to look at the world through a completely different lens. And we stop taking everything that we see in the mainstream media at face value. And we start to look at maybe, you know, what is going on in terms of the deeper, like all the deeper geopolitical agenda. Because, you know, there's no question, I have to be very, very careful what I say in the tribunal. I have to be very careful, because basically, you know, it's completely opposite to what we find ourselves with here tonight. You know, I have to take the questions at the end, man, otherwise we never get through the evening. But, you know, what we're dealing with there is people who, I mean, the chairman of the appeals tribunal is the classic, you know, former miner, salt of the earth, pillar of the community, but he could not get his head around the possibility in any way, shape or form of anybody even considering the possibility that maybe 9/11 wasn't committed by 19 Muslims. It's just not possible for him to get his head around. I mean, he's not even going to bother looking at it because it's just so far outside of his bounds of perception, he can't go there. So what we've got is this literal dichotomy in the world at the moment between those people that are still locked in really what is a disappearing paradigm, as more and more people actually start to, you know, see what's really occurring here. So, unless the judge is actually Googled my name, which I hope he hasn't, you know, he won't know anything about me other than the fact that I'm Tony Farrell's representative. And so anyway, we'll see what transpires tomorrow. So what I'm going to do this evening is look at a number of things that have been occurring over the last 18 months or so, and look at maybe what's likely to occur over the next 15 months. Because if we think things have been moving and accelerating at a rate of knots, guess what? It's going to get faster. It's absolutely going to get faster. And the challenge for us, and this is a very, very real challenge for all of us, is to be able to embrace whatever happens without basically keeling over. And we've got to be able to understand that, you know, whatever is occurring, we can get through it. It's not terminal. You know, it's going to feel like it perhaps on some instances. But let's take a look at what's occurring. For the vast majority of people out in the world, they're still random events. And they wouldn't even have the first insight of any connectivity. But what I'm going to try and do this evening is show you a little bit of that connectivity. So let's see if this works.
Breaking news on News Corp. The media conglomerate is shutting down its News of the World UK tabloid.
At this hour, you know, we really don't know just how far-reaching the scandal that rocked Rupert Murdoch's media empire will be.
get maybe some of these very top floodlights out on the screen. The News Corps scandal, it almost disappeared into the distant past now. But the News Corps scandal, of course, broke a few weeks ago in the middle of the summer, basically. And the Murdochs knew it was coming. How do we know it was coming? How do we know they knew it was coming? Because a few days will not necessarily be that many lights. I didn't mean all the lights. Is it possible just to maybe have some, like in the middle of the room? Otherwise, it's a disembodied voice, isn't it? How do we know that it's just these ones we want to get out if possible? Yeah, that'll do. Thanks. Because a couple of days before the story broke, that'll work. Not this one. A couple of days before the story broke, the Murdochs, or somebody within their organisation, registered a website called The Sun on Sunday. Sun on Sunday. So, they were already, obviously, making plans to shut down the News of the World. It was a brilliant move, absolutely brilliant move, because obviously the phone scandal was getting a little bit out of their control. And we still don't necessarily know why it was the phone scandal broke when it did, because phone hacking has been going on for certainly at least a decade. And I'm sure many of you can remember back into the late 90s, was it? There was Prince Charles, Camilla, and the tampon. And all of that broke because of phone hacking. But it just blew over. And we now know, of course, that phone hacking was effectively institutional within Fleet Street. So why pick on this particular moment? That's still unfolding. But what they had to do, they had to shut down the News of the World, because when you close a business, you close a division, the News of the World, the only thing you have to keep are the financial records. So everything else was destroyed. That's why they shut it down so quickly. And the moment they basically put that last issue into the presses, then all the computers, all the phones, all the former News of the World staff were basically told to destroy them, to wipe the hard drives, to wipe their phones, to get rid of all the paper trails, so that they could actually limit their liability in terms of what unfolds. And David Cameron, of course, is very deeply implicated, because Andy Coulson, who was former editor of the News of the World, of course, he became David Cameron's press advisor. So, and clearly Coulson knew a hell of a lot about what was going on. I'm sure he shared with Cameron. Why wouldn't he share with Cameron? So, this whole thing certainly was pretty serious. And this is the guy, of course, who blew the whistle, Sean Hoare. He blew the whistle. I think the article first appeared in the New York Times last September about the institutional phone hacking at News Corp. And the day after, basically, the scandal breaks in the UK, he's found dead in his apartment in North London. It's believed that he died on July the 17th of this year, and he was found on July the 18th. A remarkable coincidence, because this guy, of course, committed suicide. Anybody here believe the guy committed suicide? No, exactly. So, I don't think anybody in the country believes he committed suicide. I mean, it's a classic case of the administration, the establishment can tell us what they want, but the reality is that people know the truth. They don't need to have it confirmed by the establishment anymore. One of my very good friends, David Halpin, Dr. David Halpin, is still trying to get justice here, and he's taking, I'm not sure how he got on, I think the case was due to be heard earlier this week. But he's still trying to get the inquest on Kelly reopened, because the inquest has never been finished yet. But David Kelly, who of course famously wrote in an email that he foresaw a situation where he may be found dead in the woods. And just a few months later, of course, he was. But it was July the 17th, 2003, that we believe he died. He was found on July the 18th. July the 17th is an important date in the occult calendar, because it's